Taliban will align with Al Qaeda and we'll have another 9/11. You cannot protect America with everybody out. A residual force is necessary. It was an insurance policy against 9/11. The CIA in Coast, the military in Bagram was an insurance policy against another 9/11, and Joe Biden canceled that insurance policy against sound military advice. I will say again, if he does not get every American citizen out, if he doesn't get those who fought bravely along our side, the Afghans out, he's committed a high crime or misdemeanor of dereliction of duty. Any military commander would be court-martialed for leaving our people behind. And I think the commander-in-chief owes it to every American citizen and owes it to the Afghans who fought along our side to get them out, because if we leave them behind, they're going to get slaughtered.
Absolutely.
Has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That's not true. They did not reach that conclusion. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy. The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Alarms you can get anywhere, but it's the advanced communications, the equipment that you can use to move around the battlefield. That's something Russia and China would love to get their hands on. There are advanced weapons. You have warplanes that were left behind. You have so much. We have just flooded this country with weaponry.
Yeah, and Dagan, I know you're keeping track.
Of the weaponry, I want to just point out something in terms of terror. Also, the terror that we need to worry about is Al Qaeda, again, having a sanctuary in Afghanistan because of the Taliban. That in the press conference, Biden was asked, he said, Al Qaeda is now gone in Afghanistan. Al Qaeda's gone. And then a short while later, Jennifer Griffin pressed Kirby, the Defense Department spokesman, on that, and he reversed course and admitted that Al Qaeda has a presence in Afghanistan. Of course they do. The United Nations said that they do in their recent report. Actually, Al Qaeda has presences in 15 provinces. And I called, and this is, and Jennifer, she was just so incredible today, said this is the same thing. It's a repeat of what began in the early 90s in Afghanistan with a vacuum being created there. I called Andy McCarthy, who prosecuted the blind sheikh, and he just walked me through what was going to happen. He said, our defenses here in the United States are better, but fully expect in short order Al-Qaeda to start hitting our embassies overseas. This is what they did. They declared war on the United States in 96. They hit embassies in Africa in 98. They hit the USS Cole in 2000. There were other plots against our embassies, and that's one of the reasons that our allies overseas are so upset. Angela Merkel called Biden out on it and blatantly said this is just a political move. So again, terror is coming to the United States again. The only question now is how soon.
Well, and the president said today that the focus is going to be on counterterrorism and using what we can in that region to well, first of all, we've blown up partnerships, so that's going to be difficult. But there was a reporter who actually stood up this afternoon, and I can't remember which outlet, Richard, but he asked the president, he said, you said that's going to be our focus, but clearly we didn't monitor this situation accurately. So how do you tell the American people they should have confidence in what we're doing?
Well, I think that's right, Shannon. I'll be honest with you. I think that counterterrorism at this point is a day late and a dollar short. And the reason why I say that is because I think far before we even pulled out of Afghanistan, the moment that the Taliban started to make a resurgence in the country, right, which started in 2006, is when they started to regain territory. From that moment on, we should have expected Al-Qaeda to begin to grow. And the moment that we saw former presidents start to negotiate with the Taliban was the moment we should have realized. And to be honest with you, I think this is where we as the American people, think Greg said this earlier this week, is that our leaders in Washington, those that are appointed and elected, has been misleading us for a very long time. Because all we've heard is, oh, we're doing great in Afghanistan. Oh, we need a surge. And when we get this surge, it's all going to work out and we're going to win. But the truth of the matter is, since 2006, not because of the failure of our troops have been doing a masterful job, but because of the failure
to do terrible, go into difficult situations. Now we put them in the worst possible situation.
And because of a failure of Washington leadership, both in Congress and at the Pentagon and at the White House, from numerous presidents, here we sit today with the most armed Taliban ever, right? With the most sophisticated weapons that were supposed to go to the Afghan military now in their hands. And counterterrorism, like I said at the beginning, is a day late and a dollar short.
Well, and now we're in this situation where we have to get the people out who are there. We've blown up these partnerships that would have helped us to get people out of there. I'm talking with some military folks who have now been able to get civilian and private charter planes that will come in and out of there. They say they cannot get the State Department to approve those flights for clearance to assist our military and to get people out. They say that the administration, by their account, is in disarray, Jesse. And this extra help that is standing there is just idle while people wait.
I'm not shocked by it. We've heard the reports, empty planes flying off the tarmac. We have a deal with the Taliban. No offensive violence against Americans in Afghanistan until we withdraw. Trump struck that deal. Biden is a party to that deal, but when he pulled out in such a sloppy way, we lost all leverage. So now the Taliban controls everything that we're doing there. And are we saying the Taliban is just letting everyone through? No. They're blackmailing people. They're beating Americans up. Maybe they're not shooting them dead on the streets, but it's not easy. So Joe Biden is terrified to say anything until he gets out that's going to raise hostilities. And he's terrified to do anything, because if he sends commandos to go extract stranded Americans in Kabul or the countryside and things go sideways and a U.S. soldier dies, or God forbid an American citizen dies, Joe Biden has blood on his hands, and that's going to domino, and the whole country is going to explode. So right now he's tiptoeing around. He's at the mercy of the Taliban. He's throwing around money like it's crazy, and we have a deadline coming up, and after 9/11, who knows what happens.
Well, so Greg, are we trying to play nice a bit with the Taliban publicly so that we can get our people out?
The nation again on what went wrong in Afghanistan after a bombshell report proves his team was warned. U.S. diplomats in Afghanistan told the administration last month that the country was on the verge of a rapid and catastrophic takeover by the Taliban. Here's what the president had to say.
The United States stands by its commitment that we've made to these people, and includes other vulnerable Afghans, such as women leaders and journalists. We are particularly focused on our engagements on making sure every American who wants to leave can get to the airport. I have seen no question of our credibility from our allies around the world. This is about America leading the world, and all our allies have agreed with that. We made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through. It's in their interest for them to go through. So we know of no circumstance where American citizens are carrying an American passport are trying to get through to the airport. Let's put this thing in perspective here. What interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with Al-Qaeda gone?
Biden saying several times in that speech that there were no issues between the Taliban and Americans getting to the airport. But there are really disturbing reports that American Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said on a call that Americans are in fact being beaten by the Taliban while trying to reach the Kabul airport. The Pentagon asked about this just moments ago.
There are reports Americans have been beaten by the Taliban in Kabul. Is the U.S. military under orders to stay at the airport and not go protect them?
I think we've been talking about this throughout the entire briefing. We're certainly mindful of these reports, and they're deeply troubling. And we have communicated to the Taliban that that's absolutely unacceptable, that we want free passage through their checkpoints for documented Americans. And by and large, that's happening.
Shannon, they say that there are reports of Americans being beaten by the Taliban and they're troubled by it. And then the president says, everything's fine if you want to go to the airport. I haven't heard anything.
I know, it's how do we, as normal average people, know more about this than the president does, or is he being disingenuous? Because to say that there are no Americans having trouble getting to the airport, we all probably know people that are trying to get out, and we're all probably trying to help people. I know some personally, and there was a guy in the New York Post yesterday who said, he's an American, he said he took his passport, his 3-year-old, and went to the airport on Wednesday, was 10 feet away from a U.S. Marine and could not get passage into the airport. These are not, things that are not happening. These are people putting their names and their faces to them. These are public reports. I don't understand how our president doesn't know about that, or his team isn't telling him about that. Where the breakdown is but there's definitely a breakdown there. Our own Benjamin Hall, Steve Harrigan, many of our reporters who have been on the ground there for months since last fall have been warning about this exact thing. And Steve Harrigan said today, everyone he knows on the ground, and if you've been there on the ground, knows the reality of what's happening. How does the commander-in-chief not know?
So we don't know, Greg, if the commander-in-chief is lying or is confused. There's no way to tell.
Look, you know what he did? He checked Waze. He was like, how long does it take to get to the airport? Oh, it's 30 minutes. Everything's great. The Taliban does not show up on Waze or the GPS. It is amazing how bad he has screwed this up when you consider that this was a popular decision. Think about that. Let's say 75%, I think, of the population wanted to get out. So 75% of the population could have made this decision. All you had to do was get the exit right, and you ended the longest war ever. You would be a hero. But poor Joe couldn't do it. Instead, he pretends the argument is over the decision to pull out, not the horrible conduct associated with the pullout. So what you end up learning is that beyond the decision, he brought nothing, absolutely nothing to the table. That's frightening. We knew that. This is when I smeared the when I slammed the media. They enabled and protected him, as well as his snotty, elitist, untested Ivy League candy asses he's surrounded by. But most important, they buried the laptop story so this guy could get in. So Taliban should be thanking Jeff Zucker, Jeff Bezos, The View, everybody else who wanted that story uncovered. Uncovered is a good story. Or is it covered? Never mind. The whole thing is weird. The whole thing is weird because no one answers the one big question. We all know what it is. Why the Taliban? Why the Taliban? Why them? There was no other alternative over 20 years while we were there. Clearly, this is the only choice. So they just were like, hey, we're the only choice. We're just going to wait you guys out. Isn't it almost comical that a country this beloved and this desired just handed over the country to 70,000 mountain hillbillies with cell phones? What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Since the 90s, we made no progress. No progress in creating an alternative to the Taliban. It's mind-boggling. And then Obama lets their leader out, so now he's in charge. I don't know, man. It's what we witnessed was a controlled surrender to 70,000 people. We killed more than 70,000 people with ISIS.
That's right. And they have more than cell phones now, Dagan. They have Humvees, they have drones, they have Blackhawks, they have night vision goggles, they have billions in U.S. military.
Right, I was going to go through, I have it on my phone, the list of the flood of weapons that has fallen into the Taliban's hands. Greg, before I move on, the progress has been our counterterrorism operation. Combat operations ended in 2014, and the counterterrorism is denying a haven to Al-Qaeda. And not only have we not had a major terror attack on U.S. soil, we also hadn't had a casualty in Afghanistan for about a year and a half. And to quote Jennifer Griffin, the incomparable Jennifer Griffin, she said, we were in Afghanistan to stop partners, to stop terrorism from brewing, from growing. And our partners have now been abandoned. They're in hiding. They've disappeared. We don't have eyes and ears on the ground. And this, we'll talk about it later, this over-the-horizon capability is laughable. I will go into it in the next block, but we're going to be flying drones that by the time they get to Afghanistan from the Persian Gulf have very little time to actually do any work. But I keep hearing this word humiliating, that this has been a humiliating week. No. Not for Americans, not for our service members, those who served and sacrificed, those who are there, those who are going into Afghanistan now. It is infuriating and frightening. Every American listening to this garbage from this garbage president has every right to be pissed off. The only humiliating thing is the only humiliation is on Joe Biden and the people who work for Joe Biden in the White House and his administration. Fellow Democrats should be humiliated. And of course, to your point, all the media grifters and the hucksters and the swindlers who sold this broken bobblehead to the American people. Not only is he's a liar, but maybe he's delusional, he's inept, and he's a cipher. And he's our commander-in-chief, and that's why we're suffering through this right now.